Greetings all. Let's give a few minutes here to let people assemble. Great attendance. There's Mr. Anderson. Awesome. Greetings, everybody. Hi, Beth. Good to see you. Jessica. There's Mr. Glenn Lowe. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us here. We'll just give another second for folks to sort of roll in here, but just wanted to thank everybody for joining us for our second Upward Advisory Group meeting. Been a while, been about half a year since we last met. After we get everybody situated here, we'll start on the presentation. It'll be the sort of similar as last time. We'll go over what we'll talk about, but it'll be a delivery of where we are from the state, and we'll look for UAG feedback after that. Not sure how long the meeting might take. Our dry runs went a couple of hours. We have 3 total, and we'll see how discussions go, how open discussions go. So we have plenty of time. Couple more coming in. There's Audle. Hey, Kirk. Greetings. All right, I believe we are approaching critical mass. All right. Well, once again, thank you everybody for joining. Welcome to the second Upward Advisory Group meeting. We plan to give some pretty cool demonstrations today. We'll go over the presentation in a second, and we're really excited to hear from the UAG participants towards the end of the meeting. We'll have some discussions, open QA type things, and some more of those digital feedback exercises that really worked well last time. So with that, Jen, let's hop to the first slide here. So we do have a couple of new members. So at the beginning here, we'll just do some brief introductions of some new members. We have some UAG members that may be swapping positions as well. So we'll do some introductions there. We'll go over a little bit of the logistics, just nuts and bolts and housekeeping, and a brief recap of the last meeting, partly for some of our new participants, but also just to make sure, it's been a while since we met, just to set the foundation. We're going to talk briefly about some project clarifications that have sort of come up in the last 6 months where we've witnessed our own staff or external parties related to the project be not certain on which terms we're using. So we're going to try to get some common terminology established, mainly just to reduce confusion. And then we'll provide some upward project updates. This is where we'll explain how our project's going, basic progress that we've made on the various aspects of the project. We will go over briefly some of the feedback that we received from the first UAG meeting. And we're going to just do this for, a little bit of time here, do some general feedback. We received 121 pieces of feedback. So there just simply isn't time to go over every piece of feedback, but we have some great summaries. Then we'll do some feedback exercises where UAG will ask you questions and we'll get some feedback, and that can lead into open discussions or wherever UAG wishes to go. Some open question and answer time, and then we'll adjourn the meeting at that point. So there's a general overview of what to expect here. Next slide, please. Just briefly, for those that do not know, we have 4 staff present from the State Water Board Division of Water Rights. At the top there is Jennifer Hernandez. Jennifer is our advisory group coordinator. You guys get emails from Jen all the time. Hi, Jen. We have with us Jake Pasner. Jake is our data expert in the Division of Water Rights data governance team. Jake helps the Upward Cal Waters project with all of those super technical data bits. So Jake is on the call today to do some of the data discussions with UAG, as well as answer any of the more technical questions. We also have our product owner, Jeff Parks. So Jeff is our primary decision maker on the Cal Waters Upward project. Jeff oversees pretty much all of the day-to-day operations of the Upward Cal Waters project. So quite the heavy lift. Greetings, Jeff. And then lastly, myself, Brent Vanderberg. I'm the project director for Upward, and I oversee our data governance section, which includes Jake, Jen, Jeff, and others. So that's us on our side. Next slide, please. Just brief logistics. This is pretty common. If you have any questions, you can raise your hand using the icon at the bottom. You can also just type into chat if you happen to have any questions. If the meeting's being recorded, so just so you're aware, the meeting will be made public following, I'm not sure when, within a week or two, typically we make it public on our YouTube website. So, of course, don't share anything you don't want shared with everyone, because it will be shared with everyone. So please mute your microphone when not speaking, just out of courtesy. And lastly, it is kind of windy in Sacramento. I don't know where you guys are, but there could be technical difficulties, things like that. Just type it into chat if you're still on the call. If not, shoot an email to upward@waterboards.ca.gov, and we have staff monitoring that inbox, and we can try to get you assistance if we can to help you back in the meeting or whatnot. So there's some general logistics. All right. Before we get started, any general questions about the meeting or the agenda from UAG participants before we really get going here? Okay. All right, seeing none. So in the last meeting, just a basic recap, a general recap, we went over the charter for the Upward Advisory Group, and effectively the charter in summary just says we'll have a meeting twice a year, once about every 6 months, and participants, if they wish to leave the UAG, just simply need to submit an email to us and we'll say thank you. If you ever want to talk to us again about this stuff, just give us a ring. If you do plan on replacing, like having somebody sit in for you, we also just request that you send us an email letting us know, so we know who that is popping up in the meeting, and we can identify who they're sitting in for. So we'll appreciate that. The purpose of the UAG is to collect feedback, this is for the state to collect feedback from individuals that represent different perspectives surrounding California's water rights. So amongst the UAG, we have water rights holders, large and small, tribal representatives, local representatives, academic representatives, many different cross sections of those that find interest with water rights. And so from those diverse perspectives, we hope to gather robust feedback as we're developing this system to make sure what we're developing is spot on and meets the needs of more than just the state side, but also gives us ideas of how we might enhance the system in the future to meet needs that we may not have scoped originally in the platform. So that's the overall purpose of the UAG, but also it's to help build community around water rights. This is a significant time in history for us where we get to transition to a much more modern framework of water rights. And so it's best that we all do that together versus in silos. So that's a really important part of the UAG. We also went over the Upward Cal Waters players and contractors. Just in summary, the data system itself is being, the development is being overseen by Deloitte, very well-known system integrator. We also have Gartner Consulting that is helping us. They're a separate corporation that provides research level support for different institutions, organizations that are going through major IT projects. So Deloitte builds the thing. Gartner helps us understand the most efficient and effective way to build the thing to help work with Deloitte, and also do some of the administrative tasks that come with a large IT project. Gartner's great at that, so they help us with that. And there's many other players involved, Esri, Salesforce, et cetera. But if you want info on that, it's actually in the first PowerPoint presentation that you can find at waterboards.ca.gov/upward. You can see the presentation that goes through all that. We're also available to answer any questions you might have. we went over some needs and challenges of the division. Most present here were aware of the needs and challenges prior to the last UAG meeting, but in summary, we are suffering from a pretty impactful technology deficit. If you've ever dealt with ERIMS, RMS, you can see that it's a little bit outdated. And then we went over upward goals, functions, and timelines, which we'll do again today. Did some group activities, collected some feedback, and then linked slides in the recording in this PowerPoint. So when we deliver this PowerPoint to UAG afterwards, you guys can click those links. And now that we've done the last meeting recap, let's do some introductions and see if we have some new folks joining us. I believe we have Adil Dalla, who is a new UAG participant. So Adil, if you could just give us a little bit of your background.
Hey everybody, my name is Adil. So I sit in the Salt Lake City area, and it might be weird that I'm not in the California, but we are I'm part of the Western States Water Council, and the state of California is a member in our council, and we have the Water Data Exchange Program known as WADE. We provide streamlined access to water rights across the Western 18 states, including California. Our tool is called WestDAT, the Western States Water Data Access and Analysis Tool, and I can put it in the chat. You will notice quickly that California's data, surface water rights data, is not. There's some limitations there, and it's not fully there. But obviously, I'm excited that you guys have this upward project and working on improving your water rights data. So
thank you, Adil. Yeah, the Western States Water Council is a really important thing to know about for UAG. If you don't know, I sort of think of Western States Water Council as the top federal coordinator for data around water rights, specifically, or water use, which is really, really important considering a lot of water crosses those state boundaries, and we probably should understand how our water works at a more national level anyway. So appreciate your attendance here, Adil. Thank you much. Let's see. We also have Sonia Mianova. Hi, Sonia.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. My name is Sonia Milonova. I'm with the California Water Data Consortium, and I think most of you already know us because my boss, the CEO, Tara Moran, was part of this group, and she's unfortunately stepping down from her position at the consortium, and I'm taking her place. The California Water Data Consortium is a nonprofit independent organization, and we are working on a small part of Upward, part of the telemetry research unit work on possibly expanding some telemetry to feed into Cal Waters. So I'm leading a project for that and really excited to be part of the Upward Advisory Group. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Sonia. Thank you. And I promise I'm going to pronounce your last name right eventually. It just takes a while. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. And again, another very important institution, the California Water Data Consortium, basically for the last few years has been helping the state at large just do better with water data. Sort of acts as almost an independent body to just help us talk through these data issues and work through things. And I watched a pretty significant change in California water data before and then now during the California Water Data Consortium. So just a high five to the consortium and Sonia and Tara and everybody who makes that happen. Let's see, do we have any other new members that I may have missed? I think I recognize everyone, but I want to make sure. Laura Ramos, hi, welcome.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Laura Ramos. I'm the director at the California Water Institute at Fresno State. And today I'm sitting in for Steve Blumenschein. And so my interest in this effort is our center does a lot of research as well as does planning proposals for planning around flood as well as recharge. And so with both of those come a lot of the need for knowledge about water rights and how to we get them, but we also do a lot of education on water rights to landowners. And so that is why I'm here. So thank you for allowing me to sit in.
Great to have you, Laura. I'm a Fresno State alumni, so good to have Fresno State in the house. Yeah, awesome, great. Anybody else? Actually, I think Juliet, I'm not sure if you were at the first meeting. Were you?
No, you're right. I wasn't. I'm trying to get my lighting right. It's very weird right now. Apologies.
Perfection.
Yes, I did not make the first meeting and I'm finishing my lunch. I'm Juliet Christian Smith. I am with the Union of Concerned Scientists. I'm the Western States Director, and I also work very closely with the water campaign. So I have a lot of background in water and interest in this project. So thanks.
Thanks, Juliet. Yeah, and Juliet's been responsible for publishing and being, part of publication of a number of documents that have become really important to this project's existence in a way. So really appreciate having you here, Juliet. Anybody I may have missed otherwise? Okay. Looks like we have everybody. All right, great. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get going here. We have a lot to talk about today. We'll start by making sure that we're sort of using common terminology and understanding. Would not be a government project without applicable acronyms. And so we have the acronyms underlined here. Upward is a very large project that includes all of the rest of what we're going to talk about here. And Upward stands for Updating Water Rights Data for California. The Upward project includes everything from the procurement of the contractors to build the software systems to digitization team and a telemetry unit. So I'll just give some brief explanations of these things. So the Cal Waters data system is the primary focus of this group and is definitely the largest workload that we're facing right now on our side. And it is an IT system designed to replace ERIMS, RMS, and all the other associated systems that are the current water rights data ecosystem. So we're going to replace it with one system called Cal Waters. And it stands for California Water Accounting, Tracking, and Reporting System. So if your friends ask, that's what it is. We also, in addition to developing this IT piece, we have a digitization team that is responsible for scanning 7 million paper records that we currently have on the second floor of our building. This is very bad because it means you have to travel to Sacramento to see the records. The information contained on those records requires physical assessment, picking up a box, moving it, finding the record, reading the record. Very difficult for understanding what is in those records, let alone accessing those records. And part of the reason is not only are they not digital, but we don't have an electronic content management system, which you'll see right down there defined as ECM. So if you hear us, we say ECM a lot. That's what we're talking about. It's a system that contains a lot of documents that makes it really easy to find those documents. So that's the digitization piece of this. We also have a telemetry unit. It's referred to as the Telemetry Research Unit. That's what it is. Sonia mentioned it a moment ago. The focus of this is to improve the telemetry understanding and capabilities of the water board by working with reporters directly and making sure that the boards stay on top of this telemetry data stuff moving forward. And this is really in response to Senate Bill 88, but we'll talk about that in a moment. But these three things really comprise Upward. So just to add that clarification. And you'll hear us often refer to the whole thing as Upward Cal Waters, which means upward in just the IT piece. So if we start speaking too quickly and use these acronyms, that's what we're talking about. Great. Couple more clarifications. Now, these ones are a little more into the weeds, but it's important because these terms are used broadly throughout IT. So I just want to have UAG aware of what we're talking about. What we're developing right now with Cal Waters is referred to as a minimum viable product. And this is the right way to build software. You start with the minimum necessary to do the job, and then you enhance the bells and whistles from there. It's very important that software is developed this way because sometimes you can get lost in the weeds. You can start to focus on the wrong foundations of the platform and head off and maybe have to do rework or not get as good of a product. So what we're working towards is minimum viable product. And we'll talk about timelines and things like that in a second. But I just want to illustrate that the project is not done when we are complete with the MVP. Frankly, that's where it just begins. And so I just wanted to add that context for UAG. We're going to say things like discovery session. Now, this is a little bit of a pop IT term, but what this is where we work with the developers and we say, look, here's our requirements. This is what we need. And the developers digest those requirements and ask questions to fill in the blanks in their understanding. And that allows the developers to make sure that they're developing the right modules, the right software, the right functions, and that they're not just making assumptions based on a spreadsheet of pretty dry nomenclature and requirements. And these discovery sessions are critical because it allows us to, one, prioritize what needs to be built first. There's a lot of dependencies in these IT systems. So you want to know what's most rational to develop first, and then you can build from, so you don't end up with out of order development or something like that. And as I mentioned, it's also absolutely fundamental that the developers understand what we're actually asking for, which can be unclear in requirements sometimes. So that's a discovery session. And that discovery session is typically held with Deloitte. So I think in our discovery sessions, we often have maybe 5-10 people from a specific program within the Division of Water Rights, and then maybe another 10-15 from Deloitte on the same call, all having that conversation about what the state really needs. So the third one here is regulation versus software development. This has come up a lot in the last 6 months. The intent of the Upward Advisory Group is to focus on the data, the technology, and the workflows and processes, both at the reporter side, the data user side, and on the state side. This group was not developed to discuss like regulations or policy or legal changes, but I do want to invite those types of comments into UAG. But we are trying to keep things focused on the data, technology, and work processes. So not to bar comments about law or regulations, those are critical too, just not the original focus of the UAG. So also, we're all available. If you do want to talk law and regulation outside of UAG, we can help you out with that. Mr. Parks?
It's worth acknowledging that there are some areas that are a little gray in that updating processes feels like it's updating the policy itself too, but it's not our intent. And just making sure that we understand the focus of this. Another way of saying it, it's water right modernization, not water rights reform. It's a very different thing. So we want to make sure that we're keeping the conversation in the modernization, especially modernization of how we intake data and how we process things. It will lead to the other part, but it's not the focus of it. So
yeah, much time to come for legal and regulatory discussions as well. Okay, so there's our clarifications, and we wanted to just give some brief updates from the non-Cal Waters piece of the project over the last 6 months. Pretty exciting stuff, but we'll just be brief on a digitization update. I mentioned the 7 million records. We are now 120,000 records scanned of that 7 million. Now, these are scanned documents, meaning they have gone from a piece of paper into a digital image, but they may not yet be metadata tagged or any of those other processes that are associated with scanning, but we're developing our metrics to determine pace. And then from that pace, we can determine which resources we need to scan all of the documents within a certain time. So to do that, we conducted what's called a proof of concept. And we have our diligent student assistants on scanning duty and our leader, Stephen Severon, who is not on the call today. He's busily scanning documents, who has basically did a demonstration that we can scan at about 6,000 documents per week currently. With our current setup, we have numerous scanners, very detailed work processes for moving the documents around and ensuring that we don't accidentally break up that physical record, that when we're doing scanning, it's organized, controlled, and that physical paper record can come back together in its original configuration and go back down to the second floor. And so it's actually a lot of work just in that aspect of it. And we think that through process modernization, we can get to about 10,000 a week at scale, which is decent. It's going to take some time to do 7 million records, but that's where we're at right now. We're also entertaining some other vendors and technologies that can help speed this process up. But that's where we are right now with digitization. We're also looking into which documents are most important to digitize first. Of course, there's no right answer because it depends on anybody's perspective of what's most important to them. But we are working on which ones would be most valuable to individuals, including the UAG, to have digitized first. So if that's feedback UAG might have, we'll get to that during our feedback exercise. It could be helpful to know what you think is most important. And then lastly, we'll have an internal ad hoc scanning process. And that just is, for example, if the board says, hey, we have a hearing coming up and some of those documents are on paper. Do you think you can get those digitized for this hearing so that we can better access those documents? And so we're setting that ad hoc process up now. It's not set up yet, but we plan to have that in play hopefully before the next UAG meeting. And then lastly, just for expectation setting, the electronic content management system, ECM, that I just mentioned, is not going to be available until the system is past MVP. So just so if you're curious, can I go grab documents right now? The answer is no, not quite yet. We're still building out that back end infrastructure and ECM infrastructure, but we can give you another update at the next upward advisory group meeting on that part. And I believe there was a question about optical character recognition, or OCR. Now, absolutely, we will be doing optical character recognition. Unfortunately, in the tech industry, there's a different term for it no matter which company you work with, but we know what you're talking about. And what OCR is a computer looking at a scanned document and turning that picture into useful text that you can search. So if you think Control F in a PDF, pretty good chance if that came off of paper originally, there was an OCR process that made all that paper wording useful in a computer system for copy and pasting. And yes, the current process will be developing OCR versions of the documents, and we have a full text ability that we're working on right now, planned. We're not sure how this will play out. We're in development right now, where we may be able to take the text from the document and create plain text documents, derivative documents. And we can talk more about that, Jack, if you want to, when we get to the feedback part. There's also, yeah, we also have a process diagram that will help clarify what we're doing during the digitization process, including that piece. Yeah, there it is. So it's perfect. So you can kind of see the process. And again, this is not something, we're not intending UAG to understand this. And we're just here to kind of go through what we're doing with this. And if there's questions, please ask. But effectively, sort of left to right, figure out what to scan, prepare them for scanning. And you have to break these documents apart and use cover sheets to keep each individual part of that package organized as it moves through the scanning process. Those are dictated by separator cover sheets on that package. And then of course it goes to scan. And if the scan didn't go so well, it goes back to scan for quality assurance control, skewing, correcting contrast, things like that. And eventually it makes it over to indexing and review and approval of the document that has been scanned. And this is really important because we're going from a true paper record to a true digital record. So we need all that quality control in there to make sure that they are actually the same, and that the new digital one has that indexing box. And when you see indexing, what that refers to is putting metadata tags on that new digital document so that when we have our ECM, the digital document is very easy to find with keywords. That's how that works when you go from the paper to the digital world, and why you can use keywords sometimes is because those documents are tagged, and that's what we're referring to as indexing there. And then finally, over at the end, you see it gets put into the repository, or the electronic content management system. So that's a general overview of the process. There's much more detail than this, but that's a pretty general overview.
It's worth noting too that that indexing step, that is an example of where we've already used some OCR, in that, you know, pulling things like the water right number and tagging that to the document. We've used some simple examples of OCR to do that, and we're still proving it out and making sure it works how we think it is. But just since someone asked about it, that is a part of how we're using that kind of technology.
Yeah, great point. Great point. And we have a question or a comment from Kurt about taking about 13 years to do all 7 million records. Yeah, that's what back of the napkin's showing. That is extremely long time to do this, and I'm confident we can do it faster. It's just where our current initial metrics sort of landed. Just for the techies in the group, we are entertaining possible robotic process automation and trying to do things in a much more large scale way. But right now we're just exploring that to try to shrink that timeline down. We can also staff up, add more folks to do the scanning. And I'm confident we can get that at least cut in half, if not more than that. But we just don't see that right now. We have 13 years. So at the next UAG meeting, let's check back on that and see how it's changed. See if we've increased that rate a lot, hopefully. So thanks for that, Kurt. Yeah.
It's worth noting that another piece of what we're doing is looking at how many duplicate documents we have. So the 7 million documents is an estimate based on a lot of times just things like measuring shelves and assuming how many pages are in each shelf. And we know that there's duplicates of things in there. So another piece of this is we may find as we go through that it's not actually 7 million unique pages of things to be scanned. But we've also done the same math and realized that getting it done in a timely manner will mean increasing efficiency. And that's also why Brent mentioned prioritization and why that's important, because getting key things people need to see right away digitized first will be important if it really is going to take that long.
Yeah, great point, Parks. We also came to the 7 million record count by using linear feet of documents versus counting every page for obvious reasons. So definitely uncertainty in that 7 million figure, but it's definitely up there. Great. So checking to see if there's any other digitization questions. Nothing more on that. Great. If there's more questions, you can bring them up later. So let's move on to oh, Patty has a question. You might be on mute, Patty. Okay, we'll head on, and Patty, if you jump back on later, we'll answer whatever question you might have there. Great. Okay, brief telemetry update. Sonia mentioned working with the Water Data Consortium. We are going to be doing a pilot study in a watershed, and Russian River was selected as the watershed that we would conduct the study in for a number of reasons. There's a lot of diversity of different telemetry devices. There's a lot of different levels of knowledge in the Russian River around telemetry, which is one of the goals here, is to help build knowledge of what the water rights reporter has available, and then also what the modern technologies are available to help with telemetric data reporting. The first bullet here under the Russian River is the pilot watershed, really embodies the point of our telemetry research unit that I had mentioned. We want to build telemetry knowledge and relationships in a diverse watershed that can be similar or shared with other watersheds throughout California. We'd love to go to every watershed in California, but the Russian River had that good diversity and a lot of willing participants that want to work with the water board to just help us all do better with reporting water use information and various water data in general. A really big important part of the telemetry research unit is supporting Cal Water's development that Jeff's in charge of, because the new data system will be able to collect telemeter data through APIs. We'll have different types of templates and standardization processes available. Our hope is to make device integration with Cal Waters as easy as possible for new devices that come up and want to report to us, just to build a sustainable framework for collecting telemetry data into Cal Waters. So the pilot study in the Russian River will help us understand that, and what are those needs and what do they actually look like. And then the last bullet is, I think, generally sort of statewide, this is an issue, which is we need to stay on top of rapidly evolving technology. It's easy to kind of fall behind it and lose opportunities at those tools that can make all of our lives easier, make business faster, make the fee payer dollar stretch further, reduce burden on the reporters, many different things. But if the state is not aware of those advanced technologies and has not embodied them and internalized them, institutionalized them, then we're going to have a harder time trying to help folks with that. So part of it is keeping up with rapidly evolving technology. The tech curve is taken off. So that's the telemetry update and sort of some background for our telemetry research unit and pilot project. Now, there's much more to come on this pilot project. We just announced that we're doing this a week or two ago, much more to come. So again, next UAG meeting, we can update further on this. And we always have updates coming out of the water board's websites. So if you're interested in this, you can also reach out to us and we can get you some information, link you up with the telemetry research unit if you'd like more info. All right, now here's the good. This is what I'm excited about. I hope others are too. We really wanted to, in this UAG meeting, to do live demonstrations of software, which is absolutely reckless considering we are 2/3 of the way through developing the software. So we're not going to do live demonstrations today, but we do have really clear and appropriate screenshots of the new system and the old system. And we're just going to take a look at the old system relative to the new system and a couple of three, I think, primary functions that we can see improvement between the old system and the new system. But before we go on too much further, just looking for immediate thoughts, feedback, or questions from the UAG up to this point before we get demoing.
Patty asked in the Q&A, is there a QC process throughout the process?
Many. Yeah. So yeah, no, great question, Patty, because if there's not quality control, quality assurance and control, we might collect bad data or be creating bad data within this brand new system. Absolutely. So in the digitization piece, we showed some of those quality control loops. We call them human in the loops, where nothing is fully automated. Whenever we're digitizing stuff, there's always a human there looking at it. But that's pretty manual QA QC. We actually have slides in a little bit that'll talk about the QA QC that Cal Waters has. And it's called front end and back end QA QC. It'll be part of the demonstration. We'll be able to sort of highlight that. But the answer is yes. Multiple levels of QA QC. And we'll discuss what those are. And if anybody has ideas for other quality assurance and control ideas, things you've read about, we'd love to hear about them in the UAG feedback section. So. Great.
Is it worth, Brent, going over schedule real quick of where we're at? And
yeah, I think so. That's a good idea, Jeff. You know, I regretfully did not include the schedule in the PowerPoint deck, but basically, just verbally, we are approximately 2/3 of the way through the project. So the next third of the project will be completed ending in about October of this year. So, you know, we're rounding the horn into the finish line for minimum viable product in October, and we're actually hoping to have the next UAG meeting right after the minimum viable product is sort of stood up and stable, so that we can actually demo the system to UAG. So there's the rough timeline. But Jeff, do you have other sub timelines?
well, and I want to put it in perspective of why we're not demoing actual system right now. Part of it's because we are literally just finishing what's called user acceptance testing of where the product is at right now, meaning that it's, you know, not only is it a product in the middle of being built, but it's a product that we just gave them a whole host of, you know, here's bugs, here's other things. So they're actively fixing it right now. So it's we didn't want to demonstrate something and have to constantly be saying, by the way, this isn't going to be how it is, and this isn't, you know. So it's because it's a product in active development. It's not fair to demonstrate live quite yet. So
yeah, but hopefully in the early November, late October, when we schedule the next UAG, that's exactly what we can do, though, is start to actually look at the system itself. And I think that'll be really helpful for UAG. The screenshots are good, but demos are better. So if there are no other questions, let me just take a peek. All right, I think we are ready to proceed. All right. Let us move on. I believe we will, next slide.
Okay, we're gonna spend some time going over the ownership change process, give you guys an idea of what it used to be and what it's going to be. Pretty common functionality that most of you, I'm sure, have done once or twice before, maybe multitude of times. So right now in the current ERIMS system, you need to locate this form that is very high tech. As you can see, complete this form and it gets sent to the board in one of three ways. The flow right here, again, It's just an overview of the transmittal process to get it to the board in itself. And there's a number of issues with that on the fact that I'm not sure if any of you guys are aware, but our PO box number is the same as a different state organization. And the only thing different is the last 2 digits in the zip. So there have been instances where items for their organization come to us and ours go there. So that's a stall in getting to us, depending on how long the Postal Service takes. I've seen requests take up to 2 weeks even to reach the building. From the building's intake, it is sorted by division and then picked up by the records room and finally sent to the unit who processes these change requests. So we're changing hands multiple times before the correct unit even gets to see these documents. And that unit is also responsible for the billing and reporting oversight. So at times of high influx of calls or bills that are due, these change requests unfortunately can be deprioritized in order to assist live customers needing immediate responses. Once it does get to the unit, this is a little oversight of the flow of every step along the way in order for it to be processed. Right here, you can see the delay. Once we audit it, if there's anything missing, illegible, or just not clear, we have to spend time reaching out to the submitter, request this information, and that can be stalled for however long until we receive these documents. It'll continue moving along until verifying the parcel information. If that is not correct, we will request more information to validate that the new owner matches that parcel. And that can come in a number of different titles, deeds, death certificates, you name it, anything to prove that this is the correct and true person to own the responsibility of the water right on the parcel. After it goes through all that to assign the new owner, we also will have an internal QA/QC process. And if there's a lot of human error that can occur when we're inputting these numbers, transpose letters, missed the city, transposed a number in the zip code or the address. So it will get sent back for staff review if there is anything that is not correct. And that will re-go through the queue again. Another little bit of a stall is when we get these change requests, often tends to correlate when the billing is due. And we don't disperse our own billing notifications. That is sent out through our partner agency, California Tax and Fee Administration. And we don't have hands on that process. We send them the documentation for the change and we're at their discretion of when they're able to process. They also have influx times of high priority items, tax season. They're pretty busy. And also with the fact that the billing number, it doesn't always correlate with your water right number, and having to research and connect those two things when you're calling into our agency and their agency and connect these two does take a bit of human effort and logic to apply in order to get to the right accounts. So this is a pretty cumbersome process internally. We have a lot of hands on this process, all of the steps along the way. Moving forward, future state through Cal Waters, this is more like of what you're going to experience. You're going to log in, select your manage your water rights, select your ownership change, input new information, review and submit, and then the information is sent to the water boards for verification and approval. That alleviates a lot of back and forth coordination and anything. So let's take a look at the system and how it's actually going to look on the user end. As you can see here, this is just the home page. One of the neat features that Cal Waters does bring into this is seeing any notifications for water rights correlated to the account holder. Fees, billings, and reportings are all right here, easily accessible at the top. There is a search bar to help you navigate to where you are looking for information, and the tiles at the bottom are where you will actually click to navigate to your desired functionalities. Alternatively, you can use the toolbar at the top. Once you select the My Manage Water Rights, you'll open a page like this. You'll be able to see anything that is connected to your water right account. right here is a permitted water right. You're going to scroll down to the action toolbar and select change of ownership. So this is already connected to the water right in our system. We know exactly where to apply the change and who's requesting it. On the next slide is where you're going to verify who is submitting it, the name of the owner. Since this was initiated through an already logged in credentialed account, these two items are pre-populated, but it will prevent you from moving forward if you're not entering the correct information. You will select the water rights you want the change to apply to. And notice on the side, you can see this progress toolbar that lets you know where you are at in the process and what are the steps you have to complete moving forward. You also have the option to save and exit a draft of your change request should you need to collect any more information or get pulled away to another task. And you'll be able to see where you're at, re-access that at the end of this slide deck or this section, sorry. Right here is the new primary owner information. You have the ability to search for an existing contact in the water rights system. And this change request is not an existing account. So we entered in Harry Potter. He's going to be taking over for this account. You enter all these required fields that are red asterisks. You can move forward to the next field where we now have a USPS address verification field. As you can see, I entered Universal City Boulevard. USPS says it's Plaza instead. So I will verify that that is the correct address that I would utilize, ensuring less return documents to the division, and you're gonna get your stuff quicker. After you verify your address, you have the option to add any non-primary owners as well as any agents. You'll do the same search functionalities that you did for entering in the new contact information. And another new functionality that's very useful for multi-water right holders is confirming who will be receiving your billing and who will be receiving any mail correspondence. So depending if you have an agent or not, or editors on the account, then you will be able to assign them separately or both to the same. You will right here, after adding any non-primary owners, you have the ability to upload any supplemental documentations to provide proof of this change. Should it be titles, land deeds, other documentations. You have a file browser utilization as well as a drag and drop feature for anything you would like to supplement this request. This automatically streamlines that the supplemental documentation is connected to the water right. It's not going to come in separate and have to locate which water right, which request this now goes through. And so that definitely will speed up a lot of the required information. The last step is reviewing and submit everything that you entered is true and correct. You'll see the water right ID, the existing primary owner, as well as any non-primary. The new primary owners, if this is the correct information, verify that it's true to the best of your belief. You will sign by typing in your information and submitting the request. And this is awesome for multi-requesters as well. Once you submit this request, you are assigned a PAR number to the document. So you can correlate that to your requests in the next page I will show you. It's a unique ID number. You'll be able to go to your My Request page. And right here, you can see this is a submitted, completed water right request that matches the request confirmation. Should you have had to step away from your request at the moment, you will go to the in progress section and you'll be able to see that, pull it back up and continue where you left off. So
that's a great overview, Jen. That is, and we just saw a lot of different things. We saw the process for the change request, but we also saw a number of different features in Cal Waters. In fact, Jen, let's back up a couple slides, and I see that Kirk has a question too. One of the things I really like, one more back, is that on the left-hand side there, you see all the steps that you're taking. and you can stop partway through, save stuff, and come back. And this was feedback that we received from UAG during our first meeting, that this was needed, that we needed to be able to not just do one and done type reporting. So this is our first example of where we're accommodating that in one of the many workflows of Cal Waters. Great. And yeah, from Kirk, great question. Kirk asks, what if I want to take over an existing water right and I don't have access to it? For example, I purchased the land and the previous owner is absent without leave, is unable to be found.
Yeah, so in that situation, you would just initiate the request from a different screen. Let me see if I can. If you look at the top here, you see we have a tile ribbon at the top. You can do manage my request and submit from there to start it. The only difference would be is that first page where we saw the primary owner and the relationship of the submitter was auto-populated. You would enter that in yourself as far as who you are, and it will ask for confirmation of the name of the primary owner and then go into completing of the review.
Right. And
That
if you
is
run,
going to be, go ahead.
yeah, thanks, Jen. And if you run into a situation where there is something where you're stuck, that's where staff can come in and help you out too. We don't want to leave all of the staff and water rights out of this. We still have that role for finding edge cases and different things that can happen like that, where it's like, hey, you know, we didn't think about that. But Kirk, on your comment, I've added this to UAG feedback so that we can look into that moving forward and make sure that we have something to accommodate that. So thank you, Kirk.
And if you submit the request, if you purchase the land, providing that documentation of a title, a deed, transfer, anything will supplement and prove the request to change into whomever's name is the new parcel owner.
Much shorter and concise flow chart for sure in this. So thank you, Jennifer. That was a great overview of our change requests. And now let's hop over to the geospatial information data. That was also something that came up in the last UAG. So we want to hand it over to Jeff Parks here for a demonstration on that piece.
Sure. So, you know, big picture, this is how we intake location data via paper forms. And we have some examples of where we started to do digital forms as well, but it really goes back to this is the main way that most people submitted location data to us, which, you know, obviously means we have to transcribe everything that's given and assume that it's correct and hope that it really represents the right place. If you want to go to the next screen. So here's an example of a digital version of it where, you know, people are putting in APNs, they're putting in the county, they're putting in a lat long. And if you go to the next screen, there's even some attempts in the current system where you can plot a point on a map, but these things are not necessarily fully integrated together. You know, a big part of why we're doing this modernization is the more things we've added on to try to enhance our current system, it's really just tacking on more siloed kind of ancillary duct tape systems to make things work. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see an example of, you know, now when people, any kind of form that needs a geospatial element to it, or people need to plot where things are, either a point or a shape, it's integrated into the form itself, whether that be applying for a water right, whether it be a petition for change. You know, there's a lot of different reasons and places where we need location information, even complaints. If you want to file a complaint and just put a point down or an area down to show us where the complaint is. So, you know, on the right, this is how it's developed right now. Again, this is a product that's under development, so it may not look like this when it actually gets released, but just showing an example of where, you know, someone applying for a water right can actually outline where their place of use is. They can put points of where their points of diversion are. There's a lot of other features that may not be required, but may add to the picture of, you know, what the infrastructure of their water right, or whatever it is that people are trying to convey to us. And the other important part is if you're putting a point on to the map and you can see that this is where I am, you don't have to put in your lat long or what county you're in, or theoretically even what your parcel number is. All that stuff is automatically created based on where you put that point. Now, having said that, people can still help find things either by their lat long or by their address to help locate it. But this, data quality wise increases a lot of the a lot of the quality of the data itself, because we're not asking the same thing in multiple different ways and then hoping it all comes together when we as staff go to put it on the map. Another thing that we wanted to demonstrate is an interesting example of how we're combining the digitization process and GIS tools. One thing that Deloitte suggested to us is that they could actually geolocate some of our digitized maps and create GIS features out of them. So part of this project is we have a pilot that showed, we gave them some of our paper maps that we had digitized, and then they located those on, on a satellite map and associated the GIS elements to it. If you go to the next slide, example of the things that we could pull doing this, and I'll show a graphic example in the next slide that makes more sense. But this is great for realizing that the majority of our history of things exists on paper. Considering that we're dealing with things prior, even though 1914 is our official start date, we're dealing with documents sometimes even prior to that. Majority of our locational data exists on paper, and even considering our electronic records, which started in about 1994, even those early examples of GIS are sometimes unreliable. So pulling things like places of use, points of diversion, any of these feature things are an example of combining digitization with GIS, how that could be a huge enhancement. If you go to the next slide, this is an actual image from where Deloitte staff have taken our maps and plotted them and highlighted some of the features. So this is something that depending on how much information we can get into here will be available for the public as well. Only reason I'm saying that is it may not be something that's a day one availability into the system, but it's something that will eventually be part of a way for the public to view documents that like maps that have a geospatial element. If you go to the next slide, here's an example of where this is an inspection map where division staff made sure to verify where features are. And now those features, just from this paper map that was overlaid over a map or over a GIS view, we can now actually pull those features directly out of it. So this is where us not having a digital version of these features, now we can actually pull these things and start populating our system with these digital versions, and enhancing what staff have to work with. Go to the next slide. And the last piece of this is, if anyone's played with this on Google, there are ways to be able to have a time slider as well. And so we've also added this to the product where you can select, I want to see how things have changed over time. So if you were zoomed in an area and saw all the maps overlaid or all the features overlaid from our digital documents, you can see how that's changed or how water right applications and the maps associated with them have changed over time. So it's an additional way of being able to visualize both our spatial data and just the history of how things have occurred.
Yeah.
The next slide. Go ahead, Brett.
Oh no, carry on, Parks, please.
Okay. I think that's the last of this section.
Oh,
So.
great. Just a comment on that. I want to underline something that Jeff just said that's really important. We're aiming in this direction. And what this is a proof of concept that we can take really old maps, get them into the digital domain, get the digital version into the GIS platform, and then actually take GIS data off of that even further into the GIS platform. So it's this sort of sequence of steps. And I just wanted to call out that some of our paper maps don't have the necessary spatial reference information to do this. So there are some maps that we will not be able to do this with, but what we've proven is that there are some maps that we can do this with. So just wanted to add that in there for expectation setting. I think we have a question. We have a question about GIS. It's from Bram. Will there be an option or requirement for existing water right holders to provide a digital update of geospatial information such as POD and POU?
And so we're talking through this on the staff side, because there's places where this makes sense and places where it doesn't. So an example is statements where, because those are a claim, it's a lot easier for us to perhaps ask for an enhancement of, can you confirm where your point of diversion is and draw where your place of use is? This is where that line gets fuzzy between reform and modernization. Yes, we probably could, as an informational piece, ask this for appropriative rights, but then there's just to be very frank, there's a question then of whose responsibility is that for that feature to be digital? Because if we issued a permit that said your POU is defined as, X, Y, and Z, and they draw something different, which then is the controlling artifact. So there's quality aspects of doing this. That being said, there probably is still value to perhaps in some areas doing this exercise of confirm where your POD and POU is. I just want to make sure that there's thorny legal parts of that we're not trying to imply in doing that.
Yeah.
This is Kurt, just to echo that I think one thing you'll find is when the data becomes more accessible and people can kind of see, oh, okay, now I see on a map where my point of use or my point of diversion is, you're going to get a lot of, oh, that's not actually right. Like it's not there. And so I think there's going to be a demand to go in and clean things up a bit.
Yeah.
And totally understand the thorny legal issues associated with that. And I think that's one of the kind of core data concerns about ERIMS now is there's a legal representation of the water rights, and then there's truth on the ground. And those two things aren't necessarily the same. So just wanted to flag that it's likely going to happen. And so thinking about the processes to deal with that.
Right. And it's really about framing it correctly in that, the true representation of what a legal POD or POU is always going to be that actual license or permit.
Mm-hmm.
However, tools for visualizing where things are just as important, as long as it's understood that regardless, even drawing a shape on a map here is not a survey level, representation of where things are. So even with the steadiest hand or importing of from a consultant of GIS features, it still may not be the legal thing. So as long as people are clear and we have the right understandings of how tools are used, this could be a very powerful way to, as you're saying, perhaps for the need for change petitions or minor changes on water rights to make sure that that we have a real knowledge of where things are, because that becomes very important for downstream processes such as curtailments or other things. So.
Great, thank you, Jeff and Kirk. I think we have a question that came in. This one relates to digitizing of maps. And it asks, how will you prioritize your digitizing of maps, larger to smaller, State Water Project, Central Valley Project? And that's a fantastic question. We have been evaluating that. What is the best idea for map digitization? We really want to hear from UAG on what UAG participants feel are the most important priorities. But just to sort of reply to the question in general, there's a lot of different ways to look at which documents are the best to scan. In terms of like time, perhaps scanning the oldest documents might be best, considering they are fragile. They can be considered artifacts of the state. They have to be contained in fireproof safes that are a little bothersome in case there was a fire or something like that. So that's one idea. There's others. Scanning what is most simple first to like iron out the processes is an idea, and many others. But we're looking at really hearing from UAG on what you think the most important records are to digitize.
But this is also where when Brent talked about the ad hoc, where it may depend on what process we're going through at the time. If there's a watershed of focus, it may be that any maps associated with that watershed get digitized first.
And I'm just estimating on this conversation, it's going to be a cascading scale of priorities that may be changing at any time. But let's work on that just through UAG feedback. Seeing no other questions, just checking the roster real quick. Okay, one from Beth. Regarding the mapping of places of diversion, we've noticed a significant number of PODs in our watershed in the ERIMS mapping are incorrectly located. Is this a limitation of ERIMS? Will we see improvements in Cal Waters? What will be the process for correcting?
Well, I don't know we have a formal process specifically for correcting, especially if, say the water right holder themselves flags that, this is not the legally described place is not being shown on the map. But the new system, at least having it all in one place, number one, will then allow us to figure out what that best process is for that back and forth. There also will be the ability for water right holders and staff to communicate, in the new system, whether that's kind of capturing emails and recording it in their system or directly assigning, staff can assign a water right holder a task that will show up in the public side of their dashboard within this new system. So there's much more ability for a streamlined back and forth. Just as an example of, we don't have a clear-cut process yet for like how one would say, we noticed that this is plotted wrong, and it's not that it's, the wrong place is described in the, because there's a lot of reasons why it could be wrong. But yeah, there's a lot of opportunities for improving data. And I don't want to step on future presentations within today's, but Jake is going to be demonstrating some of how data quality things have been flagged in our new system, or will be. And so it may be good to kind of tee off, see that first, and then tee off of, okay.
All right, Jake. Well, we're heading into the data side of things. So Jake Pasner is up to bat for data quality issues overview.
Thanks, Brent. And yeah, thanks for teeing that up, Jeff, and UAG group members. This is really good feedback. We're really taking notes on all this stuff. So please keep them coming if you see something that just looks a little weird, especially during this data presentation. Data stuff gets into the weeds really quick. And because the Upward project is slated to do something relatively rare, which is to completely rebuild the data model from the ground up, for a legacy system, which is known to have many data quality issues, we have been through the ringer of complicated data problems. And that means that we have worked very hard to develop a process for quality assurance, quality check and control. And that's what I'm going to be going over here, this process of identification, remediation, and then future state prevention of these issues, so that we don't just, fix the stuff going forward, but make sure that the information that we've collected for this time so far is of high value and can be useful to the public. Can you go to the next slide for me? Thanks. So starting off in the way that we were doing with the other two presentations, we start with what eRIMS looks like today. Now, it's well known, exposed through the UAG, public forums, various articles in the media, to represent that there are deep known data quality issues within the eRIMS database. This is not just a problem for the public, this is a problem for staff trying to do their business. So this is a huge piece of our updating water rights data for California, and really a big piece of making data actionable for our decision makers and transparent to the public. Now, why is this a big deal? This is largely because the eRIMS system as constructed wasn't engineered with structures kind of like you put hand railings on a stairwell. Similarly, you want to put data validations on a data model. You want to make sure that the right things go in the right places. And when you don't do that, you get this really complicating looking graph in the background. Now, all these colors and numbers don't have to make sense to you right now, but this is what I look at on a day-to-day. We've built a structure that can count and identify the errors for every single one of our eRIMS data sources. So all these colors on these bar charts represent where did that data come from in eRIMS. So that might be your measurement device information, your annual report, your address. It could just be your name, the name of your company, organization. Those pieces of information which came in without those data validation guardrails have essentially caused all these problems, and they snowball into each other. Each new issue makes it harder for the next reporting period to go properly. And this is what we've seen in the public. So along the bottom, you see what are those types of errors? And we're continuing to develop this. So the errors that you're seeing here right now, some of them we're actually working on, but others we're not going to be able to do too much about. And you'll get to see how the system is going to actually help us move forward with that in the future. So this stage is the identification stage. And this has taken a lot of dedicated time, both with people within the agency, but also with our contractors, to build a system to find all of these granular little issues at the very small record level inside of eRIMS. So if you can go to the next slide. So what are we going to do with all those colors and errors and problems? Well, it's not really useful in that way, other than to kind of be a wowie zowie, look at all the things that we're doing. The real meat and potatoes of this is the remediation. So Cal Water's system, as you were seeing the front end, as Jennifer and Jeff were showing off, there's a back end, the staff portal. And this is a huge piece of our modernization, especially for data, the information that the staff get to use to conduct our business. So when these issues that we're seeing collected from eRIMS get into the system with our flags associated with them, that essentially are the guardrails saying, hey, somebody didn't do this right in the past, that's going to show up as this red banner that you see in the staff portal for the staff to use. So if they're coming along and administering something with your water right, they'll be able to see, oh, it looks like the eRIMS system had bad information for this reporting year. Maybe that's something that they can follow up on. Maybe it's something that's just going to live that way because the water right's been deactivated. But this is the process of actually flagging, so identifying it to be of known quality, but also then remediating in the cases where it's something that we can fix, maybe by going to the paper water right record in the ECM, looking at the information, transcribing it into Salesforce, and then it's fixed. It's actually remediated, and everybody gets to benefit from that process. It's not a have to do it every single time you come into annual report. It's just done. And that kind of long-lasting remediation with transparency to the public makes this really the data more valuable in general. So it's a difficult process, but the output of this means streamlined, higher quality data that's transparent to the public. This also, for the people out there that are thinking, gosh, I can't wait for this to run my code on it, because that's definitely the world I live in. These flags will be inside of the database. And that means that if you want to pull out all of the water rights that had problems in May of a drought year, you can. You can actually pull out all of those data using those flags. So this empowers not just easy use, but also really deep scientific understanding use. All right, so if we can go to the next slide and go to the last piece of this. So now we've identified our errors, we've remediated our errors. That's great. How are we going to actually have these guardrails into the future? So this is data issue prevention. And here you can see a relatively simple example of what the annual reporting interface allows and doesn't allow. So let's say that you're trying to say, here's the number of acre feet that I reported for October of 2022. If you try to put a letter in there, it won't let you save it. That seems pretty straightforward, but things like that actually take quite a bit of detail to make sure that they're robust, always done, engineered properly. Similarly, negative ones, anything that's not going to be correct. This isn't just numbers though, right? This is making sure you have things like a valid email address or the USPS address verification that we were seeing earlier. Or let's see, you're talking about POD. You want to take POD and plot it in the Pacific Ocean, it's going to tell you that's not a place that you can put a point of diversion because it's not within the state. So these validations take all different shapes and forms. It's not just your form that you're entering this into, it's even your telemetry information. So when we get further down the road, in October, you'll get to see all these functionalities for telemetry implementation. We're also doing quality issue prevention there, these validations on telemetry information. So it's really very flexible to allow us to identify issues and prevent issues into the future, and then make those results transparent to the public. And that's very powerful in terms of a bottom-up data modernization, which is something very unique about this project.
Thanks, Jake. I see Mark on cam there. Did you have a question, Mark?
No, sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. No problem. Otto has a couple of pieces of feedback also that we'll bring up. I just wanted to add one more thing to this data quality topic. It's very clear that we are taking data very seriously. The team here that is helping develop the Cal Waters project is referred to as the data governance team. And following this platform going into production, the staff that are helping us to develop this will become our data governance staff that will be working with reporters, the board, to make sure that these data elements are appropriately remediated and that we do keep clean data moving forward into perpetuity. So I just wanted to add that human aspect to the other side of the data system here.
And Otto's comments. I'll say that step one right now is getting all our current data converted correctly into the new system. But a big part of what we have required of Deloitte in this Salesforce implementation is that the new system be configurable and expandable, and specifically configurable and expandable by the board itself, not necessarily having to rely on contractors to constantly come into the system and update things for us. We want to be more self-reliant on our system to grow it, knowing that we're not going to get everything in what Brent called the MVP. And this is going to be something that we start out with the new system and we continue to grow it. But those the two things that you flagged, especially the face value one, I don't know if we've worked out the best way to clearly show both from a water right by water right perspective that these face values overlap. They're not necessarily additive, they're the same water being represented over multiple rights, but also how to show that in the data sense so that someone extracting our data can be very clear that these are not additive numbers. I know that the press or others have done things like extract all the face values from a whole system and shown that we've allocated more water than exists in the state. Of course, if you don't take the context of the water rights themselves, that's what's there. But just to say, I don't know that we've worked out the how, but the part of what we've gone with this system is that when we figure out the right how to clearly and correctly show that with the data and flag that, we will make sure that those kind of flags happen for both what you're talking about, like things like the Colorado River agreements and water rights that were associated with those, and the overlapping face values. Those are issues we know about that We may not have the right data implementation solutions, but once we have things converted correctly into our new system, we can explore the correct ways to show those, both internally and to the public.
And to follow along with with what Otto was asking about with the face value, I'll just let you know that this is something that we do have folks working on within the division, people who've worked on looking through where, you know, a value might not seem appropriate, or it might seem like maybe a unit conversion happened improperly. These are the types of data quality issues that we're talking about addressing, actually. So our system is very robust to adding in these flags. So if you have a water right that has what seems to be a very high face value, we can go back into the record, we can see if the units looked like they were incorrect, and then we can include that flag in the interface so that both the staff and the public can use that information.
Great, thanks, Jake. And we have a few questions coming in series here. We have a couple from Glenn, and then we have Brett Baker with the hand up. So I'll go in that order. Glenn asks, are you thinking through additional value add analytics that you would provide to summarize changes and key insights and trends, or are you leaving that up to data users? And it's actually both. So in system itself, there will be analytics, but the important part here is that the data infrastructure that we're building, the data model itself, is part of the data intake and management system. Above that system is Snowflake data warehousing. And if you're not familiar with what that is, you can just think of it as the place where the true curated data end up outside of Cal Waters. Now, the user may not see a difference. I'm just telling you the sort of technical aspects of that. And the concept is that your transactional system, the one that you're actually collecting your regulatory information, that one is meant for that purpose. And your analytics actually happen on the data in that warehouse. And so that separation allows for advanced analytics in a really controlled way, also really easy data sharing. Publication to data.ca.gov, many of the different benefits that come with data warehousing. So yes, we're thinking of it, and we're excited to see what the data users do with the data that is in the data warehouse. I think that's going to be a really exciting aspect of this. And then also, Glenn states a concern that may not be sure if data users will know if data is appropriate for a specific analysis, and definitely want to avoid people coming to the wrong conclusions from the Cal Waters data. So disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer on the Cal Waters data user interface. That's the first step to protecting against that. Also, we'll talk in a little bit about some of the responses to feedback from UAG. There will be hover over texts, inline help, various things that can help the reporter understand what is being asked of the reporter, which just simply is not available in the current platforms. So hopefully, Glenn, and if you have more on the follow-up, let's talk about it in the UAG chat. And Brett has his hand up. Hey, Brett.
Yeah, I just had a couple of follow-ups, and I've just been trying to listen, but on geospatial and data verification, I would encourage the group. I think it's very valuable to have those places of use mapped out. As far as verification, the water users got to file an annual supplemental statement, and I'm more focused on statements here. I'll get to appropriative licenses in a bit, but yeah, there may be overlap or some double reporting. That's what we really encountered here in the Delta, was that we were reporting for statements and also appropriative licenses, and they had overlapping places of use. So that demand was duplicated or doubled when the board would do a water unavailability analysis or look at curtailments. So I think it's both important to visualize and understand visually, but I also think it's important to understand where overlap and double counting may occur. And as we're verifying that, certainly much more difficult on the license side, as you guys were referring to, having to go up and dig up the map out of the file cabinet. But on those statements, we all submitted initial statements of diversion, which may have had a representation, may not have, of what the place of use was. But then when that user goes in to file that supplemental statement, we have the opportunity to ask them again to verify that as whether or not this matches with their reported data as to the place where water was applied or used. So I mean, I think some of the validation or verification, some of the data can come, from the users and themselves. I think that gives you a pretty, solid factual and legal basis to kind of really move forward from there.
And one of the things we've done in the new system is we've separated statements as a record type from appropriative records. And that's one thing that behind the scenes in ERIMs, it was all just kind of a record was a record, and they all shared a lot of things, and that's caused problems because statements are just different. So that's kind of a behind the scenes thing. But the other part I want to acknowledge is that a lot of this we have heard the same things and we understand the feedback. That the acknowledgement is that a lot of this won't happen day one with the new system, but our intent is to set up the new system in a way that we can continue to expand to make sure that we capture all these things, because we have a big hill to climb, and just getting a more comprehensive system where our data can start out cleaner and continue to be cleaned, and then we can add these process improvements and where needed policy changes or regulatory changes to make sure this whole package comes back together in a sane manner. That's the intention, but expectation management wise, day one, I even with all this feedback, I just don't think we'll be able to have it ready. But the pathway and the run, the runway to make these things happen will be created.
And I think also at minimum, just being able to articulate some of the issues that Brett mentioned, using maps and using actual data sets can really help us all understand these overcounting, double counting issues. And I know that's very generic, but that is a great way to start those conversations towards fixing it and working towards decoupling some of those complexities.
Great. Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, let's see. Let's see. Okay, I think we've answered a number of the questions so far. So we'll just do a quick summary. We just did a pretty large demo, talked about a bunch of stuff. Here's the overview. Basically, ownership change, quite complicated, burdensome, and manual, much more streamlined in the new interface. And I don't know if this is a good idea or not, but we use the example of TurboTax just simply because if you've ever used those online tax reporting software, similar concept that you're guided through what you're doing versus just being given a giant form and a list of rules. The geospatial information, not only finally a fully interactive GIS map interface with sorts of new features that can be plotted and things like that, but also taking that paper all the way over into the geospatial domain. I think that could be huge, especially as we look forward into the future where we're seeing things like AI really cropping up. Maybe there's a use case there we don't even know about yet that could benefit from those things. Also, we have the data quality remediation that Jake was talking about. I think often we think of these technologies endeavors as the solution, but the solution is for data problems. And I just want to underline that all of this technology talk, the data warehouses and Salesforce and all that is all geared towards having the correct, most valid, accurate data possible. And so I just want to raise the flag for data on that. And so there's the sort of conclusion of our demonstration for this UAG meeting. There's way more that we can demo and will demo moving forward, but we thought this would give a good cross section. So we're coming up on an hour and a half, and after this break here, we're going to transition over to things like feedback collection, us talking at you less, you talking at us more. Things like that. But we do want to give our participants some time to get up, grab a drink of water, pet the dog, whatnot. So right now we'll consider it 2:30 p.m. We're going to just close down for 10 minutes and have everybody join us back at 2:40 p.m. And we will see you all then. Thanks, guys. See you in 10 minutes. Like that, but oh, great. Thank you, Jen. Senate Bill 88, telemetry concepts, things like that, but it relates to either SB 88 directly or telemetry. We'll talk about a little bit about data quality recommendations that were received. That was another pretty large category of comments that we received. And then ease of system use improvements. We call these UI, UX, user interface and user experience improvements. And we had a number of comments about that specifically. And it looks like Will may have, oh, well, thank you. Well, you're welcome, Will. Thank you much for being here. So let's move to the next slide and we'll just talk about it briefly. So the largest group of comments that we got sort of funneled into instructions and guidance. And these are the two sort of overarching responses to the UAG feedback that we feel definitely does not cover all of the feedback items, but kind of gets to the point of a lot of the feedback we received. And the first one is Cal Waters will guide the reporter according to their reporting requirements. And of course, provide help text along the way, but it's according to their reporting requirements. That's pretty neat and novel. And I mentioned TurboTax earlier. Similar process concept where there are things called screening questions as you're reporting. And those questions ask like basic common stuff. Like, if you're doing an application, what are some of the things that we can avoid you having to see later on? Like, we don't want reporters to have to see fields that they don't need to fill out. So we try to screen out those fields by asking questions earlier. And it gives a much more streamlined reporting process. And then through reporting, and this will be more clear in our MVP demonstration in October and November, but help text comes in a lot of different flavors that provide instruction and guidance. Sometimes in a system, you see just general text above the field that you're entering data into, and clearly that is very helpful. But we receive feedback like, how about legal references for different elements that are being required? And we saw those legal references in the ERIMS screenshots. What we're planning to do with those is have kind of like a tooltip or a hover over for those that want that legal piece. They can just click on the little button and the legal references will pop up and associate them that way. And that way we don't drown too many users with legalese that aren't interested in it, but we give those that are interested in the legal aspects that ability to get to those legal references and things like that. And that's one of many examples of how at the user interface we can really improve our instructions and guidance while a reporter reports. And for the data minded, those that want to do analysis on our future Cal Waters data, we of course will also have a data dictionary, and that will describe the relevant information about the various data fields within Cal Waters. And that's something that we kind of have it for some of the ERIMS flat files that are on data.ca.gov, but it isn't exactly comprehensive. So there will be a comprehensive data dictionary for Cal Waters. And as Cal Waters evolves, so will the data dictionary. And I think that the guided reporting process, the inline help, tooltips, plus the data dictionary stand as that minimum viable foundation for sort of instructions and guidance that are beyond what we have now in the ERIMS RMS world. So, of course, we didn't answer every single piece of feedback on this topic, but these were the general ones for instruction and guidance. So, the next one, we received a group of feedback on Senate Bill 88 and telemetry. And I think the first notable aspect to report to UAG is that Cal Waters is being designed to be able to collect telemetered data. And what that means is, well, we'll tell you what the future state goal is to have a user that has a telemetric device to be able to say, hey, I have this device, it's this model, we know what the data format is, the device manufacturer has an API. How do I get the data to you, Water Board? And the system will have the ability to understand some of the manufacturer's schema or formats from the telemeter device for MVP, but only some. We can't, of course, cover the entire gambit of all the different APIs that are out there for all devices, but similar to what Jeff was saying earlier, we're trying to build that foundation that we can grow from. And so Cal Waters will be able to collect telemetered data. That's a big leap for Senate Bill 88 implementation, especially for larger diverters. And then also, more than half of the Senate Bill 88 comments were on raw versus curated data. And there's various different flavors of comments, but the response that I think sort of helps at least answer or step the conversation forward is, if you look at United States Geological Survey stream gauging data, you'll see a great example of where the USGS is collecting provisional data or raw data, and then there are humans in the loop that validate those data and then change the type of data from raw or provisional to curated or approved. And on a hydrograph, you can actually see the different data types. Typically takes USGS 6 months to a year or something to take it from raw to approved data. Now, that's not exactly how the telemetry data works for SB 88, but that's an example of how to treat from a data system perspective both raw and curated data by flagging them as such. And so we are intending on having data structures that allow both data streams to be submitted to us. And then, of course, I mean, it goes without saying that typical annual reporting is, of course, a capability of Cal Waters. So there's a couple of sort of responses to some of the feedback that we received on SB 88 and telemetry. And I think we may have a question about this in the chat. Let me see. Looks like it says from Mr. Toll, is there a role for a telemetry data standard that could be encouraged for adoption by various vendors? That was a discussion that we had yesterday. Yes, I think there's a great avenue for this. In fact, what we'd like to do, and again, this is discussed recently, so I'm just being open with the UAG about where we want to go with this, is similar to what is being said by Chris here, is as the state is building these telemetry possibilities for the state, what if we do this in conjunction with a number of vendors so that they can simply just have access and visibility into the process that we're using? And maybe the vendors might find it in their best business interest to adopt our standards. And, of course, we can't necessarily force that, but I could see why some telemetry manufacturers or device manufacturers might say, that's a pretty lightweight thing for us to do to ensure easier compliance with this new Cal Waters system. So that's an idea we have, Chris. That's a great and very timely comment. I'm copying it down into our register of notes here just to show that UAG's thinking similar things there. And also Beth says, it sounds like telemetry data will not be real time, providing an opportunity for QA/QC by reporter. So part of the issue is the Senate Bill 88 regulations, like in how they are written. And of course, we're all beholden to how they're written. And we can hopefully work together to make them more streamlined for everybody. But the way it's sort of currently structured is the near real time intervaled telemetry data is submitted at whatever time step is appropriate according to SB 88, sort of based on the volume of water you're using. But then there's an annual report that's also submitted at the end. And I think that annual report is the one that will often see QA/QC data by the reporter. But when compared against the real-time or near real-time data, we can see the difference where there might be differences. And that could be important in some cases. Maybe it's not important in some cases, but that's kind of one way to think about the current Senate Bill 88 requirements as far as QA/QC of the data. And then I would suppose, like on the back end of that, the staff side is, if we see something coming in anomalous that's near real time, then we just work directly with that reporter. So sort of come out of the system or maybe through the communication components of the system and just start working with the reporter, for example, saying, hey, we just noticed that your device started reporting zeros for the last reporting period. Were you aware? Maybe the reporter isn't aware. And so we can sort of start to work on those QA/QC issues real time with the reporter. And it's kind of one of the reasons that we request the raw data. It's just to make sure that everything is lining up in that final annual report as well, not just to catch things that might be happening early, but making sure that everything's lining up. So hopefully that answers the question, Beth, and happy to provide more if not. And Otto says, Sensor Things API, yes, is the next big thing. Yes, it is. We were talking with USGS about this a week or two ago, actually. Exactly. Sensor Things API is, for the nerdier bits, it is an Internet of Things concept where rather than having super expensive monitoring stations, you have much cheaper monitoring stations that are more broadly distributed. We see a lot of science heading this way to cheaper monitoring. A cool thought or a cool idea that came up while we were talking with USGS. There's a lot of work right now on AI-driven, camera-driven stream monitoring, where you train an AI on what the, say, cubic feet per second is in a stream by sticking a camera next to say, a USGS stream gauge and training a data set for like a year. And then you just let the AI go, and it should match the stream gauge's value. I know that's kind of out there, but it's an example of something that could be done for pretty cheap relative to installing a full-blown gauging station. That might be somewhere where we're heading into the future. And those types of things can be coordinated using things like the Sensor Things API. So yeah, appreciate that comment there from Otto. And we have Pat. Will common third-party data housing websites such as CDEC and USGS be easily linkable to the Cal Waters reports? Many of PG&E's PODs are reported to USGS and or CDEC, and it seems redundant to develop separate websites to comply with SB 88 telemetry requirements. Wonderful comment, Pat. We're taking this down into our notes. So for MVP, I don't think the answer to this is yes, it will do this, but I think for MVP, we may have some USGS data available at that map interface that Jeff was showing. We're in design. We're not sure if that's going to be in there, but that's not answering what you're saying here. And then CDEC integration would not likely occur in Cal Waters. We'll look into your comment here. Perhaps we need to enhance it too, but it would be more of a thing that was sort of analyzed external to the system. So if I'm interpreting your feedback, and please hop on and clarify, it sounds like having USGS and CDEC information, like having Cal Waters be aware of that information, could help reduce redundancy. And is that about right?
Well, this is a great example of where modernizing our system will feed the other lane of examining what our regulatory code currently says. Because I think part of the issue, Pat, is that some of our SB88 regulatory code says you should put it on a website accessible by the board. And I might be paraphrasing that wrong, but it's not clear whether publishing a CDEC versus publishing to a standalone unique page is acceptable. So this is a great way of, like, once we get a system to know where our data is or isn't, then we can go through the route of, is there things in our regulatory code that we need to update or clarify to make it clearer, or to enable these vaguenesses or other things to not be there. So
yeah, and so to maybe to clarify on the question a little bit, so PG&E has to report many of our gauges to USGS, and a lot of them are also on CDEC. But if you read the SB88 regulation text verbatim, it says that you need to provide your water right ID number that's associated with the point of diversion. You need to provide your measurement device numbers that are associated with it. And all these things that we can't do through CDEC or USGS. And it just seems very redundant to have to provide the same information in two different places, because those USGS and CDEC sites don't simply, have the water right ID and measurement device information on there. They don't, have the machine readable format that is being looked for. But I gotta imagine we're not the only ones who, are, posting our data to those websites. So it seems much more streamlined to have the water board have a common use application of using a USGS site in place of that SB88 telemetry requirement website is really what I was getting at.
Right. No, and I agree that it's a clarity that we need to work on in the future, because it's one of those fun intent of the law versus letter of the law things
Yeah.
where I don't think we intended to make it harder for people to
Yeah.
provide us data.
It also, and I see what you're saying, Pat. It also really brings in to sort of consideration the need for the state to be working across multiple institutions. Like we would need to work with USGS, DWR, and decide where is that master system of record most useful for which people. And I think that's the notes that we've just taken right there, is we need to look into this to make it a little bit easier for folks in that sense. Thanks for that comment. That's yeah, solid comment. Thanks, Pat.
Thank you guys.
Okay, move on real quick. Just complete the notes. One of the other things, of course, that was very common in the feedback from last session was about our data auto population. It was so frustrating. Just I remember the first time seeing ERMs, realizing that everybody reporting has to keep entering the same information every single time. It's not just ERMs. It's all over the place. It's a bad habit. And so Cal Waters is going to auto populate the common sort of static data elements that were previously reported. And this is what you're used to in most systems, from Amazon.com to, you don't have to re-enter everything every single time. So for those common static elements, Cal Waters will populate them for you. Of course, it's not going to populate the water use from last year. You'll have to write that one on your own or put that in there on your own. But the common static elements will be auto-populated. And I want to add that last piece there, including converted data from ERMs. Those data may not be accurate. And so something that we need to look at it just as a community of water rights holders, users, and regulators is that process of when reporters do have that auto-populated data, if those data are inaccurate, wrong, or maybe missing, the process for working with us to make sure that they get the data into the new system. Yeah, so that's a big one, and it relates to sort of the data quality things that Jake was talking about. One more back. The last one, this is kind of interesting, but there's logic inside of the system. There's not a lot of logic in the current ERMS RMS. And so there's actually ways to determine what can be auto-populated. And I would think that at our next UAG meeting, these types of granular questions might be asked of UAG. Like now that you've seen it, what do you think you would like auto-populated that wasn't? And we can talk through those things. So just wanted to add the logic and rules piece to this.
It's something that I'm sure nobody here, but a lot of our forms, even when we created electronic versions of them, because there wasn't a ton of logic, we get people that assume that if there's a box, they have to fill it. And so we get a lot of bad data because there wasn't that logic that was hiding things that didn't apply to whatever your particular water right case was. So as much as we can, we're trying to design any form in the new system or, follow up things like annual reportings to just not show you stuff that doesn't apply to you. So,
yeah, great point, Jeff. Okay. The sort of finale, and then, it kind of underpins the conversation of data and the importance of data quality. Jake kind of mentioned this. I'll just go over it again because it was mentioned by a number of different UAG participants. Cal Waters will have the front end quality assurance that Jake showed. That's like, don't put letters into the zip code. Bad, just don't let the data get in there bad in the first place. But also the back end system logic and rules to help identify those data quality issues that Jake was sort of talking about. And that really is the foundation for assuring data quality in a modern data system. And then there was a number of comments, I think even maybe today, but relating to like complex water rights, shared PODs, maybe overlapping places of use, just the complexities that we all realize are part of the water rights system. And Jeff had mentioned earlier, our new data model better accommodates that. We saw where the complexities were and did our best to start to make a data model that's more granular so that we don't end up with as much overlap, and we can start to untangle some of these notorious issues that we have in water rights. So we should be able to see more of that in our October meeting as well. And I think that, so that's the end of sort of our summary of responses to upward advisory group feedback received in the first meeting. And of course, the real big point here is that we hear feedback from the UAG every meeting. And we have a little, for some of our new folks that have joined, the little diagram at the bottom sort of establishes what we're doing here, which is building the foundation for us all to communicate so the state can listen, so that both parties, the state, the public, and the local, are better off in these technology endeavors instead of doing it in a silo. So with that, I believe it's time to get to some Mentimeter exercises, which we may remember from the last UAG meeting. And so how you do this is you use your cell phone to scan the little QR code. It's going to take you into our Mentimeter platform. And I think Jen is going to take it from here.
Yep. Same image on the screen. So you have your phone handy. It's very user friendly. Just open your camera and follow the link, or alternatively go to menti.com and enter the code. I'm going to go along with you guys too, because I think it's fun. So
yeah, and let's give everyone a sec to enter the code. Great.
And you should get a screen that says you're all set once if you followed it from your camera.
Perfect. I think we're ready to roll. See all the thumbs. Yeah.
This was our warmer slide. I apologize.
We do care about what you ate for breakfast, but we're just getting you ready for the exercise.
All right, so we're going to start with the survey. Again, it was similar to the questions we asked at our last UAG meeting. We're going to have them corresponded into specific groups. So this is asking you to answer all these questions related to your ease of reporting. So just slide that little bar across on the bottom, answer all the questions as you see fit, and we truly value your honesty here. So you cannot hurt our feelings.
Yeah. These will be a little bit similar to what you might remember from last time. And these are important because these are our baseline metrics. We're tracking every UAG meeting to see how these values might change. And we hope that they increase as it may be. Yeah.
I'm also realizing we didn't explicitly say it, but all the new platforms for Cal Waters are web-based and cloud-based. There is no app for it. It's accessible anywhere you access the web. So,
and I believe Otto has an ask, can you add the link here in the chat? And I know we used a QR code to get into this, and I think that's the easiest way. Perhaps Jake, can you see if we can perhaps
I
get
can.
Yeah. Cool.
Nope.
Great. So it looks like the feedback is coming to a close. Great. All right.
Yeah, I'll add the link, and then also you'll need the code, which I'll drop in the chat too.
I added the link if you just put the code in. Yeah.
You got it, Jeff.
There you go.
Thanks, guys. I couldn't pull it from my notes. My apologies. So,
Perfect.
great. Looks like we got pretty stagnant here. Let's move to the next question. So these are specifically focusing on the data quality and what's your perception on how Cal Waters will alleviate some of those previously experienced issues?
I like there appears to be some sort of like statistical curve happening in the background here. It's cool.
Reminds me of like the carnival with the little horses that race and you squirt the water.
Right.
Seeing it change.
Yeah. Who's winning? We got a dead heat between 3 and 4. Yeah. Yeah, the reporting water usage in Cal Waters can look easy or it can look complicated, but it definitely will result in better data. That's for sure. All right, I think, yeah, 14 pieces of feedback. I think we're ready for the next one. Oh, there's one more. Came in. Right in time. So division interaction. Now, this is more about relating to the division, different ways that we can help you out. Oh, wow. Sonia asks, what if the question doesn't apply to you? Feel free to not answer it if you'd like, or stand in the shoes of somebody else that you might know and give it a shot. Again, the information is just generally for baseline metrics. We're really just looking to see that there's an improvement or an understanding that is getting better. And if it's not, then we're going to try to pivot and change what we're doing and get these numbers to be higher and higher. So.
Looks like we got a little lull.
There's 14. Yeah.
I'm gonna go back a slide. I think I skipped a question. Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry about that, guys. Data access. Must have double clicked. My apologies. So these questions correlate to the access to the data that you currently have available, and should Cal Water help with any of those concerns?
It really is kind of like those races, huh? I get excited for one of them and then, yeah. I think we have 4 of these, or do we have another one, Jen? I think this was it.
This is the last of the questions. We have one more where we're going to rank the importance.
Okay. Great. Looks like we have a couple more coming in.
It's nice to use modern survey techniques for a modern system.
Yeah. Better than using Post-it notes on a board, like tracking it. I've been there.
No, we got to mail out the ballots.
Yeah, right.
Do it RMS style.
Yeah.
All right. I think looks like we have
Looks like
yeah.
pretty lull here. Move on, and we did answer this one. So this question asks you to just place these 4 concepts in order of prioritization of what is most important to you, your organization, and your workflows.
This is the hardest one for me. Trying to pick which one's the most. But
depends on the day.
yeah, exactly.
I'm definitely biased.
Yeah, that's right. Our data experts clearly know which one they want.
Oh, hey.
Jake's like, yes, I win.
That's
And also, just to UAG, if you think of useful things that we might benefit from in terms of these metrics, please let us know. Or if there's questions you think could be better phrased, always happy to hear that too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, data quality took number 1.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and access, ease of reporting, and division interaction. Interesting.
Awesome. Looks like we're pretty stagnant here for a second. A little change.
I think this was pretty similar to the first UAG as well.
Mhm.
Oh, good.
All right, now we get to the part where we want to hear back from you. So this is going to be a little bit more interactive. We are going to ask, what are your initial thoughts since the last meeting? It could pertain to the meeting, the demonstrations, the communication. Any and all information is relevant and your honesty truly is valued. You do also have the option to vote on others' comments. If you see somebody else post something, you have 5 votes per slide. And I believe we're asking about 5 questions for your feedback. You have up to 200 characters per feedback.
And this is different from last meeting. Google decommissioned the Jamboard that we used. They decided it wasn't a worthwhile product, even though we thought it was very worthwhile. So we're using Mentimeter to do this piece of it. So different format, same concept. Great, looks promising. Good, good. Usability of the interface seemed very good. Great. Oh, awesome. Great, great. Good to know that this is working for UAG. Awesome.
Hands-on testing, nice.
Yes, very nice. Predicting the future. Would be nice to get a synopsis of progress agenda before. Okay, great, great.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Progress being made.
The
Has the
remediation.
timeline changed at all since our last meeting? That's a great point. My bad for not putting that into the slide deck.
And I have a slide I pulled up to share when it's appropriate if we want to go over it at the end. So
let's do that at the end. After we're all done here, we'll just go over timeline. That's great. We'll close on that. And we can add it to the presentation that we share with the group as well. We'll stick it in. Yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate the feedback on the remediation too, because that really does take a lot of, in the weeds work to produce that. And it's great to know what are those remediation issues and things that people are looking at. So great feedback to hear from people what they're focusing on.
Looks like we stalled on comments coming in, so the voting portion is going to start now.
is it worth mentioning now, Jen, that this will be open for a while? I know we have it at the end, but just so people aren't worried that they might not be able to get it in
Yes.
there.
If there's anything that doesn't come to mind, the link for Mentimeter and these questions will be accessible for the next week.
Yeah, I think we did this last time too, because sometimes thoughts come to folks like after the meeting. We just want to leave it open so we can collect feedback. All right, so
Let's see any.
there was a vote. I just saw one. It was a little blue thumb. Okay.
Just from chiming in quickly, I think the voting for me went too quickly.
Oh, let me go back.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Thank you. It's our first time running this machine here, so yeah,
all right.
thank you.
So voting is in progress now, and we will take a few minutes. I thought we would be able to see it populated as it happens.
I know.
So
I figured as well. But...
wishful thinking.
Sure. Oh yeah, Beth mentions that Mentimeter limited my number of votes. I would have voted for more had it let me. Yeah. Okay, so
5
for feedback,
votes
well, we're gonna
slide, but we can increase that for the next one.
absolutely go up to like 20.
Mm. once you're done voting, if you can click the thumbs up button, that will give me a count of who's still working or who still needs more time in there. Thank you.
I was
Seeing
wondering
you
what
guys
that
do
did.
it.
That's the key. Okay. Think
Right.
think we're good. Seems
Yeah, let's see
steady.
what
All right.
we like. A lot of test drivers in here. Awesome.
Yes. Awesome. You guys are predicting the future questions of this exercise. Yeah, hands-on testing and beta version. Yeah, the top two, definitely. Synopsis of progress agenda before. Yep. And then multiple water rights through same POD. Not surprised that there's attention to that. Great, great. All right.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Well done.
All
And
right.
we weren't sure. Sometimes the initial thoughts from last meeting can take up the rest of the meeting. So we wanted to give flexibility, but we have a few more that are a little more pointed, and we saw some direct feedback from the last one. So, and I think we can glean a little bit from the last one, the last exercise we just did, but anything explicit, we saw a little more hands-on demo, but anything else that you want to see or folks you might want to hear from, or things we might be able to develop and provide to UAG? Telemetry pilot. Yes, okay. Noted. Great. Types of users. Yeah.
Yeah, on that comment, there's a really powerful element to the way that Salesforce develops accounts and contacts and their relationships between each other. So you can have organizations that have a hierarchy. If you have a very large bureau that then has sub-agencies, that's actually a structure that can be built inside of the new interface.
Like our US Forest Service has a bunch of like field offices and stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Comment on over allocation of wet water in the paper water rights. Yeah, that's exactly. I think that by digitizing some of the paper and getting the data in the system to be shored up, we can start to head in that direction of identifying where the over allocations are occurring in the paper. Yeah.
Just a quick one on the water availability and unavailability, because I know that came up in previous feedback. This is another example where the new system will facilitate our staff able to visualize and show the data behind those things, but it's not going to necessarily do the water unavailability/availability analysis for us, or at least in the initial release have those, whether it's strat or whatever other methodology we're using to evaluate those things, it won't necessarily be baked in from the start. Our goal is to eventually have those types of things more baked in. The point being, though, that this will enhance our ability to show how we're using those things, but it won't be those things in itself, nor will it be, again, the difference between modernization and reform itself. Nothing in here is going to take the place of current practices, but it should enhance our ability for staff to work with the public on those processes.
Mechanics of change in ownership in the context of a real estate transaction. That could be a pretty interesting use case to demo, to work through in the current system and take a look at.
One of our, for those of us who've been on staff for a long time and dealt with general public calls, one of the biggest calls we get regarding change of ownership are from real estate agents.
Sorry, that was me. I meant put something in escrow. I'm bad with typing on my phone.
Like the ownership change
I'm-
will automatically happen along with escrow, or
Yeah, and I'm happy to chat further offline.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes I
Sure.
work on these. Yeah, the only good thing about the paper form is that we can send it to the escrow agent, so it won't be released to the state board until the funds for the transaction are released. So I'm sure it's solvable. I was just trying to think how that could work. Just, if you were concerned about everything being on the up and up with the seller fulfilling their obligations, what I would do approaching it in a with just the electronic interface.
it's something we haven't fully worked out yet. Is in the new system, all water right holders will have an account or need to sign up for an account in the system to manage their things. And so, there's going to be cases like you're saying where it's going to someone's going to point to someone that says they're the new owner, but they don't have an account with you yet. How, what's that mechanism for even just inviting someone to become part of the system and link the correct things to them? So we recognize it's a need. We haven't quite figured out the how of it, but it feels like it kind of fits a similar thing in that, you're pointing to someone that's going to be coming in. And so we also need to invite them into creating a Cal Waters account and have the correct things linked to them when they join.
Yeah. It's like a real estate use case for Cal Waters. Fascinating. Great point, Jessica.
I think we're ready to start voting on this one.
Yeah. Let's go for it.
16 responses. So go ahead and open up 17. Go ahead and open up the voting. And this one, I can't see what you guys are working on. So when you're done with your votes, if you can hit that thumbs up, it really helps me to see who's ready to move forward and who needs a little more time.
Oh, Jackson waiting room. There we go.
And I'm seeing 13 people voted. I think that about how many? 14 now. I will move to the next question unless anybody has any cause for waiting.
Let's see what the votes are. The show.
Oh wait, excellent. Sorry. Voting. There we go.
Yeah. Yeah, that first one, fantastic. Yeah, how can data be used to improve actual decision making? We heard echoes of that in like sort of data-driven curtailments is what I sort of feel some of the feedback is how do we start to align things to be really data-driven for decision making?
Critical element of the data quality is making it useful for that purpose. So
Yeah.
that modeling and things that we were talking about.
Oh, integration with Sigma. Interesting, considering Sigma's not a water rights program, but water is inextricably linked. surface water and groundwater.
And I know I heard others mention, I think, those down south mentioned, things about the flood diversion, especially the newer emergency flood diversion type things. So those are all being integrated into our system as well, along with the existing groundwater recordation program. So, we definitely will have our pieces of groundwater in the new system. And yeah, hopefully I know that the board plays a role in Sigma,
Right.
even though it's not technically ours. So
Yeah,
if there's
thinking about it a little bit, since the board does have a data system that does collect groundwater, I think at minimum we could start to look at, possible data relationships there just as an experiment or a pilot. Yeah, great comment.
Are we ready for the next question?
Yeah, let's head on. We're coming up on 3:30 here.
All right, this one's kind of we're
Yeah.
want to know back from you guys. Like, is there anything here you don't see as useful, or a feature or functionality that just you will never touch, or you see as non-pertinent to your interaction with the division?
Yeah, we just wanted to invite it if in case there was something that you thought, what, that thing you just showed us is not necessary at all. Wanted to give that opportunity. Also, in a way, the question sort of could differentiate different viewpoints and perspectives in the UAG, but we know that we assembled the UAG to have different viewpoints and perspectives. So perhaps in the full demos that we do at the next UAG, there might be something you see that you're like, I don't understand how I could use that. And that's great. Yeah, great. I'm pretty sure we could not do the voting on the, but
We'll skip voting.
yeah, thanks guys. We just,
Oh,
there we go. Good. Okay, cool. Better to answer after reviewing the presentation in more detail. Okay.
Fair enough. And the slides will be open. You'll be able to access this Mentimeter for the next 7 days.
So we'll get these slides out to UAG quickly, and then hopefully, if you can review it, think about it, you still have some time to get some feedback in there. Some items less relevant to my own practice or use, but it seems topical. Perfect. Yeah, public's perspective. Absolutely. Yeah, if you're not a water rights holder, we find this a lot. We start talking about water rights, and the first question is, what is that? Like, there's just generally not an understanding of water rights unless you have one or are somehow associated with water rights. It's a somewhat small community. So great point.
And to that point, one of the beauties of the modern data stack that we're building, Snowflake that Brent mentioned, there's visualization capabilities that stem from that. We can create canned reports, so pre-made reports that then can be readily published for public consumption to make that data more accessible.
Yeah, start to make the public more aware of water rights instead of only those that directly deal with them. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So we're pretty stalled on responses. Yeah. Are we ready to move on?
Let's go ahead and move on.
All right, now the opposite. What excites you most about what we presented today?
And we're thinking like functions, modules, something that just resonates with you as something that might be game-changing or specifically beneficial to you. It's a little different than just ranking data quality is important, but what's exciting and just getting the ideas churning. Yeah, telemetry integration. We saw that in most of the responses here. A lot of interest in that. Catching up with the 21st century. Yes. All votes.
Maybe 20th.
Yeah, right. With our paper records, it kind of draws the average back to the 20th. Let's see. Yeah, geospatial correlations. As a geologist, I was shocked when I realized the lack of geospatial data model in water rights, thinking that it's this transient substance that exists in space and time, and we don't have the space part. Like that's difficult.
Want to put a comment to the integration mapping with data elements. This is a powerful element of this project, as we'll have a very robust data dictionary that will make understanding the data that we produce publicly very simple, or at least more accessible in the deepest sense, that you can not just know what that data field means, but also what issues may be within that data field, so that it's you can actually understand the nuances and context of that information.
The connecting POUs and PODs is really critical for our data sets to be useful in like ModFlow or IWFM or any of the simulation models. It's a broken data piece right now that makes water rights data very difficult to use in simulation models. It kind of relates to that geospatial correlations one.
And when we get to demo the actual forms next time, we literally have a part of new applications where they have to, for any POD and POUs that they put, they have to tell us which are connected to which, and it'll tell them if they've created a POD that isn't connected to any POU, and remind them that it needs to be connected to something. So
yeah. Okay, slowing down a little. We have a couple of comments in the chat. How about we address those while people are voting? Let's give that.
Sounds like a plan. I'll go ahead and open up the voting.
Yeah, let's go for it. I want to make sure that we have time for Q&A and stuff. So one of the comments just came in from Chris and also Juliet relating to Sigma. And Chris asked, might there also be a Sigma connection related to the telemetry pilot? More generally, the idea of the water board pulling data directly from probationary data areas rather than requiring manual labor to submit a report. Seems pretty revolutionary in the broadest sense. Comment noted, copied, and on its way to the Sigma program. I think that's a brilliant idea. And frankly, if we're managing basins from Sacramento, it might be the most cost-effective way as well. For those that don't know, I was in the Sigma program for about 4 or 5 years before joining Water Rights, so it's kind of near and dear to me here. Appreciate that, Chris. Great idea. And then Juliet says, relatedly, in basins where State Water Board has taken over, provided probationary designations or interim plans, they are collecting groundwater pumping data. And I think we can see sort of future forward here how the Cal Water's water rights system tells us about human surface water use for the most part. But these Sigma systems, be it even local level or probationary, give us the other side of that hydrologic equation. It really starts to provide that sort of robust data set that I think we all understand is needed to really start to manage and protect our water effectively.
We got 8 votes in and I believe 10 responses. I think that we're ready to see the results.
Yeah, let's take a look. Yep, POUs and PODs, high five. Great.
The flexibility, it's difficult to express this without actually seeing the data itself, but the data model that we've built was very intentional to be flexible with this type of use case in mind, where you have complicated relationships between places of use, points of diversion, and multiple water right holders all overlapping with each other. That robustness will allow us to face a lot of those challenges. That doesn't mean that its initial first attempt will solve all of them. It means that we'll work with stakeholders to continue to figure out how that flexibility can be adapted to those issues.
All right. And somebody predicted this one. So instead of us explaining all the training that we think we should do, we wanted to hear from UAG participants and your respective perspectives. What sorts of training do you think either you would want or that you would want to provide to your, for example, clients perhaps at MBK, or what are the types of training? And these, they come in a lot of flavors. The desk manual is one of the old school flavors of training. In-person trainings, YouTube, things like that. Like, what do you think would be most useful for the reporters and yourself if you're an agent of the reporter, or if you're a data interest? Yeah. It works, right? Yeah. YouTube clip with someone funny. Nice. Workshops in different parts of the state. That is always really helpful. I remember rolling out irrigated lands program and Sigma programs, and going to different parts of the state is critical. Doesn't necessarily work the same from the online version. Short live online seminars that are recorded to watch later and quick reference guides. Awesome. Maybe we could even put those on YouTube.
Yeah, and that kind of content can also be integrated with structures like knowledge articles that will be built inside of the platform. So there's ways that these resources can be linked together to make them easier to find.
Ooh, basic water right accounting 101 in a modern sort of flavor and context, where water is diverted under numerous rights with differing priorities. There's the wicked problem. Yeah. Water right accounting 101, great idea. All right, yeah, YouTube's fine, but make sure you're there too in person. Absolutely. There are farmers who report their own use. Yes, there are. Absolutely. Maybe it's kind of like a maybe a little bit of a Cal Waters data town hall that we just listen to folks and provide responses where we can. That's a great idea. Dedicated workshops for Indian tribes. Fantastic. Yes, yes. The tribal, the nature of tribes is not recognized as much as it needs to be in water rights. So I think that's really wise to have dedicated workshops for our Native American tribes.
Well, and on the comment about in-person meetings for the public, I was also curious if the UAG is interested in meeting in person in any of our future meetings.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe that's a great idea, Jeff. Maybe we'd offer an in-person if you can make it, so that it's not a requirement. I know some of us are far out from Sacramento or whatnot, but it would be nice just to meet with everybody in person. Good options for languages other than English. Yes, yes.
Looks like we're holding at about 13 responses. Are we ready to start the voting?
TikTok for now, unless somebody buys it. Yeah, absolutely. Aqua and ag groups. Yes, UC cooperative extension. Absolutely. In fact, I could see how the cooperative extensions might be able to help with some of the town halls. Maybe we show up like in combination or something. That's a great idea.
The co-op the same as UCANR, or are they separate? I'll research.
Yeah, I don't know. I know I work with the cooperative extensions a lot in the ag programs, helping folks understand how to abide by the regulations and report effectively. I think that this is in the same vein.
Oh, Juliet said same. Okay.
Yeah.
Because they do a lot of water rights things, and I saw it under that. So yeah. Nice.
Great. Okay.
We're at 16.
All right.
Let's go ahead and
let's
start
move on
the
to
voting.
yeah, and we'll just vote. Definitely want to make sure that we have open dialogue time.
And also just because we're in day out in the weeds developing this stuff, having people give this kind of honest, here's what works, here's what doesn't, here's how you'd like to learn from it, is really helpful, because we've seen this stuff a million times. And so the things that are like were confusing to us at first, we've now kind of really adopted. Each one of these pieces that you tell us really renews and refreshes our look at what we're building. And actually, it's really exciting, invigorating to continue the work.
Yeah, we also mention UAG a lot during our days. Like we refer to UAG pretty frequently, just like, okay, this is something where we could use feedback, or like, I wonder what UAG would think about this. So thanks everybody for being a part of this here.
Seven votes.
I think this is the last one, isn't it, Jen?
There's one more, but it's a very
We already
very
know.
simple
Yeah,
question.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be fast.
And we won't need a vote on it. So,
Yeah, totally.
11 votes. All right, we're stalled here. Go ahead and show the results. And if you weren't able to get them in, remember, we will allow access to this deck for a while. So even if you have other ideas or come in, and I'll increase your vote amounts in case any new information comes in and you'd like to vote on that. So
Awesome. Oh, cool. Yeah, you can see that the combination of online and in person is priority here. And then working with our ag groups and Aqua and others. Yeah. Awesome.
yeah, I think reaching out to a lot of the ag organizations would be a great place to
Absolutely.
do some of these town halls,
Yep.
farm bureaus. They're all
Yeah.
great.
Cool.
Awesome feedback. And our last question, which has already been proposed a few times, but would the advisory group, you members here, like to test out the platform once we get our minimal viable product ready?
We weren't sure, but had a hunch. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Yep. We great and will do. Access to the system comes with some training. We do have to advise that we'll want to do some training for everybody before we let you run wild in the system, just as we would expect anybody to use the system. But we hear you loud and clear. We'll start working on what that's going to look like and how we can do this sort of as a team. Sweet. Yeah, thank you, everybody. I think we got this one. We can head on to our sort of closing here.
Yeah, I'll hand it over to Jeff to share the schedule.
Yeah, let's just take a look at the overall schedule real quick.
Yeah, I'm gonna take over the screen real quick. Can everyone see
Yes.
This is from a previous presentation, but luckily I can grab it and throw it in real quick. So where we are right now, as I mentioned earlier, we just finished user acceptance testing. And just for reference on this screen, I say PI, that's product increment. We're building this in 3 product increments, and we just finished the second one and about to enter the third one, which is wrapping up all the MVP pieces. State staff will be testing it in September, and then what I'm calling internal release. So they're creating a production environment, but essentially it's our beta environment. So that's our beta product is coming out in October. At that point, Deloitte's technically done building it, and we go into more of a maintenance phase. But realistically, the way we're going to treat it is exactly as a beta for both internal staff, because we got a lot to do to get our internal staff trained on it. There's a lot of personalizations we need to do to make sure that the system looks how we want it to look, and the staff side is very configurable. But this is the logical period for getting the UAT access, or sorry, UAG access to the beta version, and the public. So if there's any period that's most likely for us to do this public workshops, it's going to be this November through April period. And even the May system cutover, that's an estimate right now. There's no hard it has to happen in May. The only thing that's really guiding us at this point is that we did not want to, very theoretically, we could have cut over in October, but that's right around when annual reporting comes around, and we did not think it would be helpful to release a new system at the same time as annual reporting, which also means for expectations, there's going to be one more round of annual reporting in ERIMS RMS. But the upside of this is that gives us more time instead of trying to squeeze it in quickly. That gives us more flexibility and more time, being that we're going to cut over in 2025, and then so the first new annual reports that are going to be coming in, since that's the main thing that most water right holders, that's their main touch in with us, is the annual reporting, will happen in the new system in 2025 in the fall.
And where we could probably get UAG hands-on is in that purple part right there, internal configuration, enhancements, and public outreach.
Yeah. And as Jen said, we'll make sure that to add this to the overall slide decks when we send that out. This will be in there. Oh, any questions before I unchair?
I'm not seeing any in the chat. So.
All right. So with about 12 minutes, we did want to have some time for some open discussion, just thoughts, ideas, anything concerned about what we've shown that maybe you want to just talk through, clarifications.
So I don't. So one important piece, at least internally, is that we do not intend to have any of ERIMS or RMS still running at the same time as Cal Waters. So where it's not going to be a partial changeover where we start accessing some of Cal Waters, but some of ERIMS is still active. It's going to be a full system where we switch from one to the other, and nothing goes to ERIMS/RMS anymore, just simply because maintaining two data systems is too complicated. So our plan has always been when we're going to switch over to Cal Waters, it will be the same thing as decommissioning ERIMS and RMS.
We hope no one's going to be disappointed. We don't think anyone will be disappointed.
Gonna miss it.
Yeah, that is important to know, though.
Yeah.
Like Brett. Yeah.
Just one question. So in that internal release, we built an API that works with RMS to submit our reports. Will we have an opportunity to try and kind of dovetail into Upward or Cal Waters prior to the release or the swap over? I mean, will we get some opportunity to work on stuff like that?
We're talking with Jay and Lindsay as we speak, trying to figure out the best path forward for Delta ACP.
Cool, great.
Yeah. And Bram, I believe you had a hand up there.
Yes. Hi. I posted the question in the chats, and Jeff answered it to some extent, but I kind of want to bring it to your attention again. So we have an appropriative water rights, and some of the limits are based on calendar year. Reporting is on water year. So yeah, it's tough to say, oh, are you compliant with your water rights on February 1st. That's just too short of a deadline to get all the data and analyze it. So maybe it'd be good to have some flexibility in the tool to say, that I'm just saying, yes, I'm in compliance with the water right from the year before, because, on February 1st, I don't know yet for the one that's just passed. Opening up our water right and asking the board to change it, we're always hesitant to do that. Opening an existing license, you don't want to do that if you don't have to. So that's probably not the way we want to go, but just that, it'd be hard for us to say, yes, we're in compliance with our water rights for the current year, just because it's in a different time step. That's all maybe that you can accommodate.
Understood. And that's a great point of where perhaps there's a simple regulatory change. If there's something pointing and the regs pointing to requiring water right holders to ask that or to answer that, so.
We need to certify that in the ERMs, right? Did you comply with your water right? So if that question's still there, then yeah.
And even if it's a simple reframing of within the water year instead of within the calendar year, but
yeah. Although we don't
yes.
know, we don't know until the calendar year ends if we're in, we know we'll be in compliance, but you don't know how much you divert until the end of the year. So there's no way to really truthfully answer that question.
No, understood.
Mm. Thank you.
I believe Mr. Rice. Yeah, Jack, you had your hand up.
Yeah, kind of a question about the transition, and I know this is way out there, but it looks like you would report, if it's going to switch over in May, that the reporting would be in February 26, right? We have a lot of folks, though, that kind of only think about this once a year. And so will you know by February of 25 for sure whether the switchover will be in May? Because it seems like that's probably the last time they'll actually pay attention or may get the message that next year it's going to be a different system.
Yeah, no, it does. The short answer is if we included something with that rollout of 20, this year's and reporting a message about this new system coming online, that's probably a good idea, because it will be coming in 2025 prior to that year, the 2025 reporting. I mean, unless something catastrophic happens, that will happen. We will have the new system. So it's a good point that's a logical point to at least initiate that, because you're right that we can send out whatever we want. They may not pay attention to it if it's not linked to an annual reporting. So
yeah.
Great comment.
Yeah, that brings up an important timeline too. We need to have these timelines established, knowing when at which point in time we're doing what things, from training to all of that stuff. So calendars in the making. Let's see.
This is Kirk. Sorry, I've been in the car, so I haven't been able to engage in Menti as much. But I just wanted to ask a question about the access, so the sort of the beta testing access, and will we be able to get some of the data access tools, kind of not just the user interface, but actually being able to access the data itself through an API? I know that'll be really valuable for me for beta testing.
So the data warehouse infrastructure that we're developing, we can have the infrastructure there, but the system is only going to be partially populated with information until we go live. So I think there's a half answer there of what we have available, we will provide, but I'm not sure what the API will be able to pull back yet. And perhaps we could think about mock data maybe, or something like that for testing. Yeah, Jeff, do you know any details about like API interaction or having a API definition or anything on CalWaters?
I'm sorry, it just interacting with an API over so this is something that's not fully fleshed out yet, but theoretically we will have endpoints available for people to access our data. And one of our consultants uses the TurboTax example in another way, in that, you know, the IRS has a system where they need things, and they just need the data. And so someone else could create a third-party program to access either, you know, request data or push data back. So theoretically, we haven't explored all of these, that we can, because there's API connectivity, we can open up our data for direct queries. We'll also have the data warehousing as well. So we haven't, all this to say, we haven't fully worked out the best ways to make sure that people will be able to access data. But that being said, the technology is definitely there as far as having endpoints for people to connect to our data.
And Kirk, to your question, I think the answer is partial. We're not sure what it'll be, but what I'm really interested in is working with you and some of the more technical users on UAG to figure out what do you want and what do you need, and how do we work through that in future enhancements to develop robust API comms for external users.
Great. Yeah, happy to send some like sample type queries, or just what are the questions we typically ask.
Right. Appreciate that, Kurt. Thanks. Okay, I don't see, there's no more hands up or questions unless I'm missing something. We're coming up on time. Great. So yeah, just some closing thoughts real quick, everybody. Mentimeter gonna be open. Don't hesitate. Hop in there if something comes to mind. Doesn't have to be nice. It can be critical. We like all of the feedback. If you have any questions in the meantime, or just as always, you can reach out to upward@waterboards.ca.gov. That's the easiest way to communicate with us. But in the event you want to talk about something a little more sensitive or anything like that, you can always reach out to me directly. I can help you get where you need to go in the State Water Board. If you have questions about other things that maybe aren't even related to this, don't hesitate. We're looking at about 6, maybe 7 months till the next UAG meeting, because we really want the thing ready, right? So that's going to determine the completion of MVP will determine the next UAG meeting, but we're on schedule right now to meet the timeline that Jeff showed. We're excited to do demos, and we're going to be thinking through some training and ways that we can get UAG onboarded to the demonstrations and get you kicking tires yourselves. So with that, thank you everybody for the time today, for your feedback. You are instrumental to making sure that our systems work for as many users as possible. We'll be sending out the slides and other information in the days to come here. And until we see you next time, just a sincere thank you to the entire UAG. Thanks all.
Thank
you.
Thank you so much. See you next time.
Thank you.